Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the 5,407th meeting of the Rotary Club of Oakland, number 3, third oldest Rotary Club in the world. I'm Isaac Kos-Read. I'm the chair of the PR and Communications Committee, and I'll stop shouting at you. I'm subbing in for President Mary, who was away in Mexico distributing wheelchairs in Monterey, I believe. And, in fact, I want to ring the bell for President Mary real quick just to get things going in a good vein today, because she's not overseas, but in another country helping folks in Mexico. Let's ring the bell. To those who don't know, a ring of the bell, you'll see the bell ringer beacons on your table, is a generous $100 donation to the Rotary Foundation and helps us give back to the community. We're a diverse community of 270 businesses, professional community leaders who unite to serve our local communities in the spirit of service above self. Okay? Wonderful to have you all in the room today. And for those who are joining us online, it's wonderful to see you online as well. To get us started, we like to always have a thought of the day, a thought for the day. And our thought of the day today will be coming from Rotarian Will Hobbs.
Thank you, Chairman Isaac. And can everybody hear me? Great. The thought for today is 2 quotes from 2 authors whose messages I think and hope are relevant to our guest speaker's topic. The first is Toni Morrison. She says, "To be given dominion over another is a hard thing. To wrest dominion over another is a wrong thing. To give dominion of yourself to another is a wicked thing." And James Baldwin, "Not everything faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced."
Thank you, Will. Those were wonderful thoughts to frame our day. If someone could bring up the Rotary Vision Statement, please join me in reciting it together out loud. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Thank you so much. Do we have any guest Rotarians? Guests are welcome always to visit our club. And will any members who are bringing guests with them today, please stand up and introduce them. I see past President Sean.
I'm here to introduce Brian Gabrielle, who is considering membership and owns a construction waste cleanup business here in Oakland. Welcome, Brian.
Welcome, Brian. Any other guests, members with guests? Oh, down here in the front. Please introduce yourself and your guest.
Celeste Gordon. Can you hear me? Okay. Celeste Gordon, and I have Sydney Moss here, who is the wife of our speaker today, mother of 2, and here as the largest support system that he has with him.
Thank you, Celeste, and welcome, Sydney. Anybody else? Guests? How about online? Any guests online?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. How about visiting Rotarians? We also always like to recognize one of the great things about Rotary is that it's a global community, and wherever you go in the world, there's an opportunity to connect with your Rotary Club there. Any visiting Rotarians today?
We have visiting Rotarians online.
Anybody?
Nope. We have visiting Rotarians online.
Past President Peter, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me? I sense you cannot hear me.
I can hear you online.
We can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there are a couple of visiting Rotarians that are online. We have Liz Gallegos from the Rotary Club of Cupertino. We have Scott Plakin from the Rotary Club of San Francisco. And I think that's it, and sorry for the confusion.
Thank you so much. Let's give applause for our visiting Rotarians. Wait, I see another guest who just walked into the room who might need to be recognized. Let's see if President-elect Tom would like to take care of that, calling you on the room.
Yes, thank you, Isaac. This is my daughter, Natalia. She hasn't been to probably 6 years, but she woke up feeling very sick today, but she made an incredible recovery. So she's here with me.
Welcome, Natalia. Okay, jumping ahead, we will not be inducting a new member today. We'll be saving that for another special occasion. But we are going to have our 3-minute self-introduction, and I have the privilege of introducing Ed Braille, a very special, wait, what's going on? Oh no, who is this? Oh, fear for all of us. I think I should let him take the mic.
Thank you, Vice President Isaac. Isaac also is my sponsor. My name is Ed Braille. I run Chapel of the Chimes Funeral Home. So not only is this because of that, it's because we are having a Halloween party a week from today at 5:30. Where else? What better place can you have a Halloween party than a funeral home? Next week, I'll be giving a little more information about Chapel of the Chimes, its history. Julia Morgan, of course, was the architect behind it. We'll go further in depth there, but certainly we're going to have 2 open bars. We're going to have a full buffet of food. Everyone come in costumes, preferably. It's going to be a night you won't remember. It'll be the talk at the water cooler the next morning. So thank you very much, and we will see you next Thursday at 5:30. Thanks, Isaac.
Thank you so much, Ed, for that invite and for joining Rotary and for leading Chapel of the Chimes, which if you have not been, which I'm guessing everyone has at least paid it a visit once, is quite a beautiful place here in Oakland. And I will only make one small amendment to your invite, which is that I hope it is a night that you do in fact remember, unless you have a little too much to drink. Okay, moving along here, we are just zipping through this meeting, which is great news because it allows more time to focus on the issue that we have our speaker for today, which is very exciting. Okay, we have a committee announcement, I believe, from Commissioner Tom Lamone. I think President-elect Tom, you have an announcement to make regarding an upcoming football game.
Yes.
If we can bring up the football slide.
So if you haven't heard, we're getting together a group of 50 people, and then for Ahmad Anderson's induction into the Hall of Fame. Ahmad also has a group of 50 friends and family that will be there, so it's going to be a real special occasion. Also, Marshawn Lynch is being inducted for last year's Hall of Fame. And then also we have another upcoming event, which is the Oakland Ballet's Luna Mexicana, which is happening next Saturday on October 29th at 2:30. Tickets are $50. And I think we have about 10 tickets left. We purchased 20. So please get on that. It should be a really wonderful event. Thank you.
Wait, we have a question for you. How will we get the tickets for Ahmad?
They're electronic, so I have them. I'll be emailing them out today.
Okay.
If you purchase tickets. How do you buy them? You can buy them on Eventbrite, or you can talk to me or Jesse and purchase them directly.
So everybody got that. We got a football game honoring Rotarian Ahmad, and we have a Luna Mexicana outing, which is an amazing ballet that I've seen before by the Oakland Ballet in honor of Latino Heritage Month, and a beautiful presentation. Another outing. One of the great things about Rotary is we really come together in community here, but also outside at other events in the community. Okay, I just heard that we have 3 more visiting Rotarians, and so can we please have someone recognize them? I believe they're all visiting online. My understanding is additional visiting Rotarians. Past President Peter?
Yes, so we have additional visiting Rotarians. We have Roland Williams from the Castro Valley Club. We have Jill Durig from the Livermore Valley Club. And we have also Alan Love, who's visiting. He doesn't mention his Rotary Club, but perhaps that's the 3 extras.
Welcome, visiting Rotarians. A round of applause. Okay, without further ado, we'll get to the substance of the day, and it's really my honor to welcome past President Seth Butner up to introduce our speaker.
As you know, a few years ago, we started our quest for our DEI committee. And thanks to Rotarian Celeste Gordon, who has headed up our efforts in trying to get everything done with that. She's come up with a fantastic speaker here today to kick this off. Evan Moss is an anti-racism activist living in Santa Cruz, California, with his spouse and 2 young sons. His spouse is here with us today too. Born and raised in Arkansas, he comes from a family known for protesting and driving changes in their community. His own visceral activism was triggered by the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, which is exactly when we started our quest to come up with this DEI committee. The event moved into a new level of anguish about race in the US, and he felt he had to speak out. He decided he needed to talk out about it, so he invited people to join in weekly conversations for many months about race and various people from Apple that he works at and his other social circles, trying to communicate the reality of authenticity of his experience. It's a rather unique experience. Evan comes from Arkansas. I can say that because I came from Missouri. We had a little talk beforehand, and he's going to explain to us what it all means to him. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome for Evan Moss, Project Manager.
What up? My success today depends on y'all asking me questions. Y'all ask me questions and y'all giving feedback, you all sharing your thoughts. And so don't let me flop. That's my request right now. I'll start by thanking my wife. You'll notice I get a little choked up from time to time. That's fine if I cry. If I get emotional, nobody panic, it's okay. I have already accepted that my goal is to be the most honest and the most vulnerable person in the room right now. So let's get with it. I have to thank my wife because without her, I likely wouldn't have had the motivation to do what I've done. I'm from Arkansas, and so I grew up with racism. My first real racist experience was in the first grade, like the summer before the first grade. I remember going into the first grade and seeing Mr. Moss, my teacher, and being left in the room with this white lady and wondering, is she going to hate me like the white lady across the street at home? And I've carried that weight. I've had to deal with that since the first grade. My wife, though, is from Northern California. She's white, if you can't see her. And our experiences with race are just, they couldn't be more opposite. And it was the need for her to know what I was going through that led to the presentation that I hope somebody watched. And without that inspiration, I don't know that I would be here today. So Sydney, thank you very much. Did anybody watch my presentation? So, okay, all right. Let's have a conversation about it. I talk about race because it's the aspect of my identity that is attacked the most. And while it's been years since I've been called the N-word, racism impacts me every day It was about 6:25 this morning when I saw something on Netflix that made me wince. Every time I step into the office for work, every time I go to the grocery store, every time I think about leaving my home, I have to deal with racism in one way or another. Either the repercussions of a previous experience or something new is said that throws me off. My hope, though, is that the ideologies I share today about racism can be used to combat sexism, used to combat genderism, heterosexism, whatever social issue is important to you. My hope is to inspire somebody today to be anti-racist. It's my thought philosophy. If you live in America, you're probably a victim of racism. If you grew up in America, if you've been here for multiple years, without question, you are absolutely a victim of racism. And if you don't know that, we need to have a conversation about it. If you don't know that, you're missing a whole lot. And my thought is, if you're not explicitly fighting racism, if you can't say I did something to make racism smaller, then you are actually helping it stay. You're helping it remain. That said, being anti-racist is scary. Being anti-anything in America is scary. It could literally cost you your life. It could cost you your job. It could cost you your reputation. It could cost you your kids, all kinds of things. And with that in mind, it's important to me that you know why I choose to be anti-racist, because it is absolutely not out of the goodness of my heart. If you watched the video, you saw my oldest son, Brixton. He turned 4 in June. He is absolutely beautiful with brown eyes and very long, curly brown hair. My second son, though, Hendrix, he just turned 2 a few days ago. He showed up looking exactly like my wife. Her same skin, blonde hair, bright blue eyes. And I think about the people who sit at my dinner table every night. There's myself with my long history with racism, my wife who didn't really know anything about racism prior to us working through the George Floyd presentation together. You have my oldest son who looks mixed, or he is mixed and looks black, and his younger brother who is mixed but looks white. Every person at my table has a unique racial identity. What are we gonna say? What are we gonna do when they start to notice that people treat them differently? What am I gonna tell my white son about racism when he notices that he's treated differently from my black son, and vice versa? How are we gonna have a unified approach to teaching them about race? How am I gonna teach my kids to love their skin, knowing that I grew up despising my own? I have no idea. But every time I have a conversation like this, every time I have an interaction like I hope to have today, I feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more capable of not failing my son when they ask me, Daddy, why am I different? And that's the one reason I'm here today, hoping that somehow I figure out how to be a better parent. Let me get my notes back. Many of us have been taught not to talk about race. I've known people to say, I was taught in school not to talk about race, not to acknowledge race, but understand that the words you don't say and the words you do say are 2 halves of the same whole. And not talking about a problem won't make it go away. Not talking about racism won't make you any less racist. Not talking about race just leaves you blind to an aspect of reality that I cannot ignore. Refusal to acknowledge race is refusal to acknowledge an integral part of who I am. And I mention that because not being racist isn't enough. I've known a lot of people to say, I'm colorblind, I don't see color. That's crazy, because in America, everything else sees color, everybody else sees color, I see color. I have to live with it. And refusal to acknowledge race is refusal to see me. Race is the aspect of our society that accounts for the unique history that created each subculture. My grandfather didn't learn how to read because of race. My grandmother didn't finish high school because of race. My mother, my aunts led boycotts while they were in high school because of race. And so to say that race doesn't matter, race is made up, race isn't real, on one hand, sure, you can believe that. But in reality, race decides a lot. Every time I leave my house, essentially every decision that I make in one way or another, I have to account for race. And if you don't, great, good luck. I mean, not good luck, but good for you. But that also means there's a whole level of my life, there's a whole aspect of my life that if you refuse to talk about race, you refuse to acknowledge, there's a whole part of me that you can never know. Some people raise their hands when I said, did you watch my video, my presentation? That's a story I shared out of necessity. You'll see my hands are sweaty already. I'm a little anxious. I cannot help but show this anxiety. I'm scared as all hell right now. This is terrifying for me, but I'm not gonna run from this because I remember the moment my wife told me George Floyd was killed. And it's crazy how it's just a news story. It was on the other side of the country. I've never even watched a video myself. But at the same time, the moment she told me George Floyd was killed, that was one of the most painful moments of my whole life. When I think about the magnitude of emotion that I felt in that moment, the next saddest moment in my life was my grandmother passing when I was 6. The only other moment I can compare to finding out George Floyd was killed and the emotions that came, the only other thing that compares to that was the birth of my first son. That's the only emotion, that's the only moment that even comes close to evoking, to taking so much out of me. I shared that presentation some 30 times in 2020. The first time was for 7 people at work. And I thought I'll just do this one time. And maybe if I tell them what I'm going through, maybe if I tell them how hard it is to talk, how hard it is to breathe, how hard it is not to cry, how hard it is to leave home, how hard it is not to panic at any moment. Maybe if I tell them that, maybe they won't lose trust in me. Maybe if I tell them the whole story, they won't think I'm crazy. Maybe they won't fire me. Maybe my wife will understand. Maybe she'll stop asking, Evan, what's going on? Maybe she'll be able to see me. Maybe I won't fail my kids. Maybe if I tell this story, something good will come from it. But I thought I'm only gonna do this once. And then person after person asked to see it, Evan, there's 25 people that report to me. They all need to hear this message. Would you be willing to share this with them? And so I committed to sharing it again and again, and eventually just told Apple, told work, I'll keep doing this presentation until people stop showing up. And that day never came. I'm here now. Come on, notes. Technology sucks sometimes. Forgive me. No, I said I work for Apple. I gave this conversation, I've hosted this conversation, I gave that presentation to thousands of people around the world. I've had the conversation I hope to have with you all today, I've had with people in Brazil, people all across America. And I've collected comments and feedback from thousands of people. And the commentary can be summed up by 2 main comments. Everything people say usually falls into one of these buckets. It's not Black people saying, I think back one comment, this lady said, I'm a 51-year-old white lady from New York. I've lived my whole life in New York. And I thought I knew what racism was. I thought I knew what race meant, Evan, until I listened to your presentation, I realized I knew nothing. People either say something along those lines, or I hear the words from my friend Coy, who watched my presentation and said, Evan, thank you for helping me to feel more at home in my own head. There's people who never think about race, and there's people who have to think about it every single day. And today I challenge you to ask yourself these questions. What does race add to your life? If you can't answer, you might need to spend more time talking about race, thinking about race, because if you're unaware of what it adds to your life, you're missing a whole lot. For me, race gives me strength. It's recognition that, holy crap, life must have been so much harder for my grandfather. He was born in 1906. He had to deal with people getting lynched. He had to deal with sundown cities and making sure he was home before dark, knowing he had to deal with so much, and somehow he still managed. Somehow I'm still here. How is that possible? And for me, race is a connection with a strength that I didn't know I had until I had it. I didn't know I had until I needed it. And now that, like, being conscious of that is something that allows me to be much more thankful. It connects me with my family. It connects me with so much in a way that allows me to do so much more than I could when I was ignorant to this fact. What does race add to your life? Conversely, what has racism stolen from you? The answer to that question is how you find your conviction to be anti-racist, because it's stolen something from all of you. And if you don't know what that is, how can you go about getting it back? How can you go about making sure that it doesn't continue to rob you of the beauty of life? For me, I know there was a time where I thought, Evan, there's no way you could marry a white lady. There's no way you could marry a white girl. You're from the South, like your family would never exist. So much, Evan, you couldn't do it. You can't do it. That was my thoughts in high school and middle school and college, because that's something I had to deal with, something I had to think about. But also I recognized if I had allowed racism to continue to infect my mind in that way, my wife wouldn't be here. And it's just crazy how the universe shows me she's very much she's my partner for life. And racism could have taken that from me. It could have taken my beautiful kids from me, and it didn't. Today, this is the end of my speech. I got choked up a little bit. I'm about to open the floor. But before I do that, I want to make it clear that this is my way of protesting. When it started, COVID was still a thing. We were terrified of it. My wife was pregnant. Sydney was pregnant. And I couldn't be in the streets marching. And I still had to find a way to do something. This is how I protest. I say that to suggest if you really care about racism, if you really care about being anti-sexist, if you really care about making change, find your own unique way to protest. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like what anybody else is doing, but it should be something that allows you to use your own natural personal gifts to make a change. I hope to help you find your way, hope to inspire you to find your own protest. Also, I hope you understand that silence is complicity. Not speaking out against racism, not fighting racism just makes you complicit with it. Whether or not you know it or not, whether or not you're aware of it, doesn't change anything. With that in mind, you may never know who your silence hurts. But also, silence isn't free. We think, oh, if I don't talk about it, it'll go away. No. The pain of racism isn't always easy to see. It's not always visible. You're not always conscious of the ways that it impacts you. I've been having this conversation very explicitly for 2 years now. Few days have gone by where I haven't talked with a stranger about racism since the day George Floyd was killed. And yet I'm still uncovering ways that racism impacts my life, that racism changes my behavior, that racism influences the decisions that I make. The trauma that you live, it just doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear on its own. Silence just locks the negativity in and just allows it to continue to influence you. If you talk about it though, it allows you a path forward. It allows you, it at least gives you the chance to see another perspective that helps you. Today, I hope, don't waste my time trying to be politically correct. Don't worry about offending me. You won't offend me. I promise you won't. I want to hear, for those who watched the video, what did you like? What did you dislike? What surprised you? What did you learn? What did you want to hear more about? What questions did you have? What did you disagree with? Talking about these things is how you'll come to see me for the human that I am. It's how you'll come to see the people around you more thoroughly, more clearly. And it's how we'll make the world better. So with that in mind, I'll just open the floor, hoping someone has a question that we can talk through. Yes.
Yeah, for questions in the room, if you can please head over to the mic, that's the best way to do it. And let's definitely make sure to honor his request. And for those of you who watch the video, let's share our thoughts.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon and welcome to you as a couple in particular. Bless your hearts, because you guys have a lot of things you have to sort out because you are raising these young men. So I haven't seen your video, but I will. And I'm going to invite you to talk to the League of Women Voters in Piedmont soon, and we can only pay you in love. But there are two things I wanted to share. I am light-skinned. History is whatever it is, but I get really irritated when people invite me to not be Black. So that's the conversation I have to have and figure out what my response is going to be. And the other thing, as we all go forward and trying to make sure we do our journey to do more and to understand each other and to care and love each other, I think a simple example would be, she was State Assembly member, Senator Holly Mitchell, and she's now on the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles. But she initiated a law called the Crown Act, because Black women would lose their jobs over their hairstyle. Meanwhile, as time went on, younger people who are not Black, purple, pink, it's like, so to me, that's an example that would be easy enough to explain to people, God or whoever you believe in created this hair, and now you're telling me that I'm going to fire you because of the hair you have naturally. So anyway, thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Oh, I was going to respond to what you said. It's interesting how a lot of times people think about racism or no racism. I think about this man named Austin. Austin was saying, I know racism exists, but I just never see it. And when you talk about hair, it's easy to think like that's so far away. That's in another building. That's somebody else's life. But it was just a couple weeks ago, I talked with an intern. I talked to every Black person that I see walking around at Apple. And this intern asked me the question saying, is it okay for me to have this afro at work? Is it okay for me to have my hair long like this? My mom told me I should cut it off. I can't be walking around looking crazy. I can't be walking around looking like a fool. And it's interesting how people younger than me are still having to deal with the insecurity of knowing, am I allowed to have hair? I don't have the choice. I mean, I could straighten my hair and grow it out and make it look like his, but that wouldn't be healthy for me. It wouldn't be healthy for my body. It wouldn't be natural for me. And that would be requiring, I would be diminishing part of myself in hopes of looking like the majority, in hopes that somebody else will then accept me. But having to diminish any aspect of myself just means I show up at work less than. I show up at work less capable to do my best work, less capable to show my best self, less capable of showing my greatest intellect. That's all I got for that. But I thank you for bringing that up.
Can we get a mic runner over to Alita? That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Alita, did you see the video?
I just put up a slide of a question that's online.
Check.
You know, I'll tell you what, while we're waiting to get that technological problem solved, since you brought up Apple, could you talk a little bit about racism in tech? And both the workforce, but also the coding and the implicit
okay.
bias.
I think it's okay now. Can you hear me? All right, I'll make it quick. Thank you for perspiring for us. I really appreciate it. And it's a huge list. And in the interest of divulging and being honest, I would like to say that I spent a lot of time reading about race, about thinking about it. And, I consider myself to be somewhat educated. I carried signs and all those things. But I asked a friend of mine last week, why is it that Black men are very nice to me and very kind to me? And I said to her, if I was a guy and I was a Black guy and I was being some white lady, I don't think I would be particularly interested in being nice to that person. And she said to me, they're trained that way their whole lives. They have to be. So I'm grateful for my friends. They continue to educate me every day of my life. And being white has impacted everything I've ever done, everything I've ever said, and every aspect of my whole life. So that's my.
Hold on, don't run away. Just hold on, come back. I'm surprised at how many people comment on not knowing white women are terrifying. I joke in that, to me, one of the scariest things that happens in everyday life is noticing a white lady clench her purse in a store, knowing I'm a threat to that lady. Because if the cops show up, who are they gonna believe? Regardless of the circumstance. And it's in one way that sounds like a very stereotypical, oh, that's something you expect a Black man to say. Sure. But at the same time, just last week, my friend Lynette told me about how her sister was at a bar. Her Black sister was at a bar, suspected that her drink had been spiked. Her sister called the cops. The cops show up, take her sister away. It is the Black lady who ends up handcuffed to a chair for 12 hours without having the option of using a phone. And her family having to deal with this lady being missing for 12 hours. And it's that story. It's Zach Kinsman telling me, this teenager who's still in college, he listened to my presentation live once and we had a conversation about it afterwards. And in that conversation, he said, now that I think about it, every time a gun has been pointed at me, it's been in the hands of a cop. And he was so accustomed to having guns be pointed at him by cops, by hearing stories about his friends being pulled over and almost being shot by cops. He told me multiple stories. When you're that close to it, when you know people who have dealt with it, it's hard not to look at a cop and stand up a little bit straighter and think, let me make sure my belt is closed right and nobody's worried about me. But similarly, who is going to be the first person to call the cops and have me become the next George Floyd? A white lady. I don't know the last time I was afraid for my own safety because of another person. I don't look at other people and get afraid. I do look at other people and get afraid of them being afraid of me, if that makes sense. And who am I most scary to? White women. So who am I allowed to show real emotions to be my authentic self in front of? Not white women, not ones that I don't know. Who do I have to be nice to make sure that they're not afraid of me, that they don't have a reason to call the cops, that they don't have a reason to panic, that they don't have a reason to be afraid of me? White women.
We have some questions from the Zoom people.
Evan, I'm from New Orleans and also spent formative years in Hot Springs, Arkansas, both cities that are painfully steeped in racism. What challenges did you encounter with your marriage, and how have you and your wife worked with your respective families to teach them to be anti-racist? It's a tough one. What challenges did I come with in Arkansas? Hell, I was Black. I mentioned the issue in the first grade. My first memory of racism, my first memory with race, my mom, myself, and my two older sisters are twins. We were one of the first Black families to move into this neighborhood the summer before the first grade. And my sisters set up a lemonade stand in the driveway. And I remember the white girl across the street who was the same age as my sisters. She came outside and she rode her bike back and forth in the street between our houses. The moment that girl's tire hit our driveway, her mother comes out in this big white dress with massive polka dots, and she is screaming, fuming, "Get away from her, get away from them, don't touch her, don't drink that, don't talk to her." Furious. I remember the lasting image, there's two images. The one is seeing this lady looking down into my sister's face, screaming at her about the offense of offering her daughter lemonade. And the second image is seeing my mom come out. Like, my mom's a very put together lady. She travels with a suitcase of jewelry anywhere she goes, just to make sure she's accessorized properly. You won't see her without her hair being done the right way or without her makeup on. But she came out of the house, she got out of the shower, she was still wet. She only had on a robe. And I remember thinking, like, my mom, the savior, has shown up. Somebody might die today. I don't know what's gonna happen, but those two images of this terrifying white lady and the fact that my mom had to be a person that I'd never seen to protect me. My mom had to become a different human to protect me in that moment. That was how race was introduced to me. And it felt like a few weeks later I went into the first grade and had to wonder, does Miss DeMoss hate me like that lady? What challenge did I have in Arkansas? I was light-skinned. Where's the other light-skinned lady at? Thank you. That just meant the Black kids didn't accept me. Like, colorism is very real. And if you're not familiar with colorism, what do you really know about race? Because for me, it was a Black kid said, oh, Evan, you're not a nigga. You white, you can't sit with us. You can't play with us. And for me, at that time, growing up in Arkansas with the family that I had, the last thing you wanted to be called was white. The last thing you wanted to be called was another race, because that's not who I am. And there was always this battle of not being Black enough for the Black kids, being too Black for the white kids, and not knowing where I really sat. You think about dating and racism is not something I get to talk about much, but I didn't see Black girls in class. I took the advanced classes in high school and middle school, and that just meant I was almost always the only Black kid in class in every single class except PE, starting in the 6th grade. And so naturally, who do I date? The people I see in class, the people I know how to talk to, the people I already have relationships with. And that starts in middle school, that goes on into high school, that goes on into college, where again, I'm at Carnegie Mellon University. There's only a handful of Black people on campus anyway. Who do I date? What options do I have? White women. And for me, it took a lot just to acknowledge, Evan, this is just an aspect of your life. It's just the way it is. This is how things have to go. Family, suck it up. Family, deal with it. If you don't accept this, then that's your fault. That's something I struggled with mentally for years. And it really wasn't until I was able to answer the question, what does race add to my life? That I was really able to get over that I was able to move past that and understand it's racism that makes my Black family think, Evan, you should only date Black women. Because that's crazy. There's no reason for that, really. How did I get past it? I didn't have a choice. I fell in love with my wife and I trusted it. I trusted my heart. For me, it's important not to run away from vulnerability and not to run away from things that I'm afraid of. Because by forcing myself to be vulnerable, I learn more about myself than I ever have by challenging the expectations that people tried to force on me, it just highlighted what was important to me and what wasn't. And the more I'm able to discern what aspects of my life are most important, what do I care the most about, the more clearly I can answer that question, the happier I am. So. Next question. Please, next question. What you got?
Okay.
It's all you.
My name's Lou Regali. I'm on the DEI committee in the Rotary, but I'm speaking for myself, not for the committee. I want to voice my applause on the story that you gave in your video. It was very impactful, and we all need to hear that. I grew up with white privilege, totally oblivious of anything else that was going around me. But things changed about 7 years ago. And what changed was I walked past a homeless person. He was black, and I walked past him 3 times. On the 3rd time, I said, why am I walking past this person? He deserves some level of respect. And I went back and I said, I'm Lou. I live next door. Anything I can do to help you? And he said, I'd like a hamburger and an ice cream soda. Well, that started a friendship. I got to know his sister. I got to know his story. He didn't live very long. He was very ill. But it changed my life. And what made me turn around and go back? It's stories like yours that we don't hear the first time, the second time, the 3rd time, the 4th time. So keep it up. Now, yes. I do want to say a few more words because I have a perspective in terms of what we need to do. Basically, we have to change our behavior. You know, humans don't like to change their behavior. And we've got a lot of challenges, but it can be done. I've done it for myself, and I'm working with others to do it. And it's very simple. The problem is, first of all, that our culture, the culture we identify with, has certain values, and it supports behavior that is consistent with those values. Unfortunately, the main values that it supports is dominance and competitiveness. It should be at the other end of the scale, cooperation and nurturing. How do we change that? Well, your good intentions aren't going to change that. It's the same way when you try to break a habit. You can't think about breaking the habit. You've got to practice it. So you need a practice routine, and it's not difficult to accomplish. You need to practice behavior that is consistent with respect and nurturing. And that can be done. You'll displace that bad habit that you have, and your life turns around in a very sweet way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I try to tell this story as much as possible because I love it. I thought for sure you were gonna comment. I was nervous that you were gonna comment on how difficult change is, because that comes up in every one of these conversations. Somebody always pushes back, oh, Evan, change is slow, is so slow. An interesting thing that's happened is the more I talk about race, the more I study this topic, the larger the problem seems. The more egregious racism becomes, the more I understand how many people are impacted by it. But I also want to remind people not to forget the moments where change came about in your life very quickly. There are things that we've all heard, things that we've seen that you only have to see it once, you only have to hear it once, and you'll never forget it. To exemplify that, I'll share a story. My sisters, my wife's brother is gay. And one holiday he was home, he was visiting us with his best friend, Layla, a lesbian. Me and Layla were on the couch having a conversation, and I was very candid and said, I feel very strongly that gay people should be allowed to marry. I think revoking gay rights to get married is absolutely crazy and asinine. But I honestly don't know where I stand about same-sex couples being able to raise a child. I couldn't really argue a stance one way or another. It felt like they should be able to, but I had my worries and reservations. And this had been something I had thought about for years because I have a crazy aunt who condemned my sister. Oh, you're going to hell for attending a gay wedding. Like that's the ugly side of racism that I also know, the ugly side of sexism that I also know. And so I've been struggling trying to figure out, Evan, where do you stand on same-sex couples raising kids? Layla looks at me and says, Evan, if one woman can raise a man, why can't two? And coming from a single mother home, it was just like, holy crap. And in just that one instance, I realized those years of questioning were all for nothing, Evan. This is the perspective that matters. And my hope is that by sharing my story, I create that same aha moment for someone else. Whereas instead of wondering about same-sex couples or whatever, maybe it becomes more acceptable for you to invite a Black person to dinner. If you've never had dinner at a Black person's house, like with a Black family, you are missing out on life. Like I tell you now, like my mom, for example, if you've never eaten dinner with my mom, you don't know her. You, without question, I don't care how long you've known her, how many years you've worked with her, if you never ate dinner at her house, you simply don't know her. And if nothing else, I hope that somebody's like, you know what? I want to challenge that thought. I want to find out, what am I missing? And go out and figure out how to get one of your Black neighbors to invite you over for dinner. Experience might change your life. So.
Rania, and then let's also check after Rania's question. Let's check and see if we have a question online. Any other question on? Okay, Rania, please.
Good afternoon, Evan. Thank you so very much. I did catch your video. I just really appreciate just the rawness and the trueness of what you share, how you share it. Very similar because my family is from down south. I have a lot of the kind of ingrained prejudice, that you spoke of. I was raised not to date a white person. I raised my children that way. And it was just probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was like, Rania, like you have to change that. And then I ended up dating a white man. And, it was like, okay, I could do this, and just even, we have those same fears. It's, in the reverse of, and my question is to you, because literally the other night I was thinking and crying, honestly. I was like, why would God make a people that has to be so oppressed? Even though back in the days, we didn't start off that way. We were the kings, we were the queens, we ruled this world. But now our lives are so, the knee is literally on our necks and we see it and they want us to see it. Those videos are not by chance. It wasn't by accident when our kids are literally lynched in the street. It's a repeat of what our ancestors, with your grandfather, what my grandmother went through. And so it's just now in 2022, they're a little slicker about how they do it, but it's definitely to send a message to us so that we live in fear, so that I'm raising my Black sons in fear. And so my question is to you, how do you get that peace? I definitely rest on my ancestors and I know who I am. And so I could walk around strong and beautiful and know it, but I still know I have to keep it calm because sometimes, oh, I'm angry or I'm a little rough or a little hard. I'm like, oh, but if I was white and blonde, it would be, oh, she's expressing herself. And so how do you find that peace?
I can't quote where I got this from. I wish I remembered, but I listen to a lot of podcasts about spirituality. And something I was listening to, I don't know if I listened to this or I read it, but it said, the universe gives you hard times as a means of exposing your limited thinking. And while I can't answer why would God make these people who are oppressed so much, but I can say in a way, showing up for the challenge and deciding to do something about the racism that was plaguing me has changed my life in absolutely magical ways. Like, this journey that I've been on has benefited my life more than anything else. My connection with my kids is so much stronger. My connection with my wife is so much stronger. I'm more confident in my own self. I'm able to walk around and be my authentic self in everywhere I go. And I'm better at everything I do because of this newfound peace and confidence that I have in myself. Part of that relies that you trust in God. Like, you ask God, you ask a question about God. You also have to trust that being your authentic self will be rewarded. Trust that the difficulty of fighting against the oppression that you mentioned is not for nil. It's not for nothing. Because again, if you had told me, Evan, you were going to impact the lives of literally thousands of people, if you told me that a year ago, I'd have laughed you out the room. But look at the change I've been able, you can't see it, but imagine the change I've been able to create just by telling this story. And if I didn't have the hardship, I wouldn't have the story to tell. Right. And so now I only talk about race because that's all I know about. But I like to believe that somebody has listened to me talk about race and then went out and fought sexism, then went out and was more accepting of somebody else. And so why would God make these Black folks that are oppressed? I don't know. But if I wasn't oppressed, then would I be able to drive change the same way? I'm not sure. It is through talking about race, though. It is through stepping up and taking this challenge. It is through committing myself to using my own humanity to make something better. It is through that process that I found God. I wasn't religious. I'm still not religious, but I wasn't spiritual by any means prior to this. The moment I found out somebody was spiritual or religious previously, I was like, oh, I think less of this person. I told my Aunt Evelyn, don't talk to me. But I lose respect for you every time we talk about religion together. That's who I was before this journey. But now I'm completely open to the idea of religion. I understand I prayed all day yesterday. I prayed all morning today, trying to make sure I was mentally present. I was able to be here today. Completely different person. And it's only come from opening myself up, allowing myself to be vulnerable, and trusting that the universe would give something back that's good for it. Here I am.
Unfortunately, we do have to cut it there. And one reason I can say there's no way we can possibly get through all the questions because I alone have 7 more here. So my task will be to see if I can get an invite to Evan's mother's house for dinner. That's my goal. Evan Moss, thank you so much for truly, this is awesome and fascinating. For me, it was moving and heartfelt and profound. So thank you. Education is President Mary's focus for this year. And the Rotary Club of Oakland is proud to partner with Oakland Promise to offer 8 $10,000 scholarships annually, along with mentorship in support of the Oakland Promise. We're proud to support many as their first in their family to attend college. In recognition of your presentation today, Oakland Rotary will be making a donation in your name to the Oakland Promise to support its kindergarten to college program. Okay. Oh, please, that you took the words right out of my mouth. Ring that bell. We need some bell ringers. Ding, 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 ringing the bell. What are you ringing the bell for?
As a lady from Mobile, Alabama, I'm going to ring the bell twice, but you are more than welcome to come to my house for a soul food dinner.
Oh. Sounds like an invite. We got another bell ringer down in front. Celeste.
And I'm also ringing the bell for our visitors online from the district diversity office.
One for all of them. Oh, Nima.
I'd like to ring the bell for Evan, that you moved me and made me think about a lot of things. I was brought to tears a few times in this. I'm emotional thinking. I wanted to ask you a question. I hope I have time to do so after. Oh, sorry. And I'd like to ring the bell for our today's president, the president for today. So I'd like to ring the bell 2 times.
Thank you. Keith, right behind you.
I'd like to ring the bell. I'd like to ring the bell for Evan, and also to challenge each and every one of us to bring about change in ourselves and our club. Thank you.
Amen. Lou, Rania.
I definitely want to ring the bell for Mr. Evan, and just to tell you, people are texting me online and just saying thank you for speaking our truth.
Oh, beautiful. And I'm gonna ring the bell for the people online who are paying attention, because every week we post about this meeting and it's an impressive thing to share with the world. Please tune in. If you're out there, tune in, share it on social media. Good stuff is happening here.
I'd like to ring the
Will.
bell I'd like to ring the bell for Evan and thank him for taking the vulnerability to put himself out there in the fashion that he has.
Ache. Lou.
Ring the bell for Evan.
Amen. Anybody else? Any other bell ringers in the room?
Name's Jackson, first time bell ringer. Can't think of a better one to do it for. Thanks, Evan.
And while we pull up Bruce, any other bell ringers online too?
We have bell ringers online. First of all, Mona Hall is ringing for Evan's presentation, and Shannon Hackley is ringing the bell for Evan.
I heard 2.
Ever since I saw the video earlier today, I wanted to ring the bell for Evan, so I will definitely ring the bell for Evan.
Hey.
Hi, I'd like to ring the bell for Evan. Thank you so much for your presentation today and sharing your perspective with our community. Appreciate it.
Woohoo.
Very inspiring, Evan. An important message for us all to hear. I'd like to ring the bell as well.
Past President Sean. Okay, I'd love to keep everybody going, but we are very good about staying on time, and we try to stay on time here at Rotary. And so I would invite the new member I'm sorry, not a new member, our sponsor for the meeting, to join us in the back of the room so that as folks leave, they can say hello. And Keith Uriarte, are you going to share about next week's speaker?
Yes, thank you, President, for the day, Isaac. Next week's speaker is a person who put fun in funeral. Next week's speaker is a proprietor of Pushing Up Daisies. Next week's speaker is the doctor of DOA. Yes, fellow Rotarians and guests, next week's speaker is the unapologetic location manager of Chapel of the Chimes, Oakland, Ed Braille.
Hey.
Yes. Ed will take us on a virtual tour of the historic Julia Morgan designed chapel and provide us with some fascinating facts about who is resting in peace in Oakland. So see you next week.
Okay, thank you so much to Will for the thought of the day, for Ed for his self-introduction, for Sess, who wants to say one more thing.
I wanted to ring the bell, but I wanted to remind everybody, make sure you see those that see that video. You gotta watch it. You gotta have everybody.
One bell ring, and please watch the video. We'll make sure to share it on social media as its own separate post. I want to thank Tom for announcing the special events we've got coming up, for Keith for the teaser for next week, and President Mary will be back in the ballroom next week. So shishini, which means thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned. I mean, Dudley.
Mute the mic. I want to disconnect the microphone.